In the spring of 2022, two young people from California began a connection that would soon change the course of their lives. They met through a popular dating application, where many users search for friendship, companionship, and sometimes love. Both of them came from different cities within California, but the convenience of technology allowed them to communicate daily and quickly grow closer. After several weeks of conversations online, they decided to meet in person. Their first meeting took place in Los Angeles, where they shared a casual dinner and spent hours talking about their lives, their interests, and their future plans. What started as a simple encounter soon developed into a relationship that seemed serious to both of them. Several months later, as their bond deepened, they began planning a trip together. They wanted to celebrate their growing connection by visiting a country they had both dreamed of seeing, England. The trip was scheduled for late summer in August 2022, when the weather would be mild and many tourist attractions would be open. The couple believed that traveling together would bring them closer and allow them to experience a new chapter in their relationship. With excitement and optimism, they booked flights, arranged accommodations in London, and listed the places they wanted to visit. At that moment, they saw the trip only as a joyful adventure, a chance to explore a new culture while building memories as a couple. They did not know that the journey, which began with so much hope and enthusiasm, would later lead to a series of events that ended in tragedy. The story begins with two individuals who lived very different lives in California but found themselves connected through technology. The man, whom we will call Daniel, was 32 years old and worked as a software engineer in San Francisco. He was known among his colleagues as quiet, intelligent, and very focused on his career. For several years, Daniel had devoted much of his time to his job, which left him with little opportunity to meet new people or build serious relationships. After encouragement from a friend, he decided to try a dating application. He was not necessarily seeking marriage right away but hoped to find someone with whom he could share meaningful time. Daniel's life outside of work was simple. He enjoyed hiking in the nearby hills, reading about history, and occasionally visiting small cafes around the city. He had a small circle of friends, but most of them were busy with their own families. Because of this, Daniel often felt isolated. His decision to join the app was partly motivated by loneliness and partly by a curiosity about whether technology could help him connect with someone compatible. The woman, Emily, was 29 years old and lived in San Diego. She worked as a nurse at a private hospital and was admired by her coworkers for her kindness and dedication. Unlike Daniel, Emily had an active social life, often spending weekends with friends at the beach or attending community events. However, her busy work schedule, which included overnight shifts, made it difficult for her to maintain long-term relationships. Emily had used dating applications in the past but had not taken them too seriously. When she matched with Daniel, she felt curious because his profile seemed different from the others she had seen. His profile picture showed him in a simple outdoor setting, and his description was honest and direct. She appreciated the way he described himself as someone who preferred quiet evenings and genuine conversations, rather than nightlife or parties. The first conversations between Daniel and Emily were cautious but respectful. They talked about their jobs, their daily routines, and their families. Over time, they began to share more personal thoughts, such as their goals for the future and what they valued in a relationship. Daniel admired Emily's dedication to helping people in her role as a nurse. Emily admired Daniel's patience and his ability to listen without judgment. They quickly discovered that they had some common interests, such as a love for travel and a curiosity about different cultures. After several weeks, Daniel suggested that they meet in person. Emily agreed, and they arranged to meet in Los Angeles, halfway between San Francisco and San Diego. Their first meeting was simple: dinner at a quiet restaurant followed by a walk in the city. Both later admitted that they felt comfortable almost immediately, as if they had known each other for longer than just a few weeks. In the following months, Daniel and Emily continued to meet whenever their schedules allowed. Sometimes Daniel drove down to San Diego, and other times Emily flew up to San Francisco. They spent time visiting museums, walking along the coast, and sharing meals. Their relationship grew quickly. Friends of Emily noticed how she often spoke about Daniel with excitement, while Daniel's co-workers observed that he seemed more cheerful and motivated at work. For both of them, this connection brought a sense of balance that had been missing from their lives. By the start of the summer in 2022, the couple began discussing the idea of taking a trip together. For Emily, travel had always been something she wanted to do more of, but her demanding job rarely allowed for long vacations. Daniel, who had some savings and a more flexible work schedule, supported the idea. After considering several destinations, they agreed on England. Both had a fascination with its history and culture. Daniel wanted to see historic landmarks such as the Tower of London, while Emily was excited about exploring the countryside and visiting museums. They carefully planned the trip, choosing August as the month to travel. They booked round-trip flights from California to London, reserved a small hotel in the city, and made a list of attractions. The plan was to spend about 2 weeks exploring London and nearby towns, including Oxford and Bath. Friends and family supported the couple's decision. Emily's parents were pleased that she seemed happy, though they were slightly cautious about how quickly the relationship was moving. Daniel's friends expressed encouragement, noting that it was good to see him open up to new experiences. For Daniel and Emily, the trip symbolized more than just a vacation. It was a chance to test their relationship in a new environment. Traveling together would mean spending nearly every moment in each other's company, dealing with both the joys and the stresses that come with navigating a foreign country. Neither of them anticipated any serious problems. Their focus was on the excitement of exploring England, walking through historic streets, and enjoying time together. They viewed the trip as the beginning of a stronger commitment. In early August 2022, Daniel and Emily arrived at Heathrow Airport in London. The weather was mild, with occasional rain showers, typical of the English summer. They checked into their hotel, a modest place near central London, and immediately began exploring the city. Their first days were filled with sightseeing, visiting Buckingham Palace, walking along the Thames River, and taking photos at well-known landmarks. Emily enjoyed capturing moments with her camera, while Daniel appreciated the chance to experience history firsthand. At first, everything seemed to go as planned. The couple appeared happy, and their social media posts showed smiles and excitement. Friends back home followed their journey online, liking and commenting on the pictures they shared. What began as a joyful trip, however, would soon shift into a much different story, one that neither Daniel nor Emily nor their families could have expected. The first week of Daniel and Emily's trip in England was filled with excitement and new experiences. They visited well-known attractions, tried local food, and spent hours walking through different parts of London. To friends and family following their updates online, the couple seemed to be enjoying a memorable vacation. However, beneath the surface, small disagreements began to appear. Travel can bring stress even to the strongest of relationships. Daniel preferred to follow the planned schedule strictly, while Emily often wanted to take things more casually. For example, Daniel would insist on leaving the hotel early to make sure they arrived at certain landmarks before the crowds, while Emily sometimes wanted to slow down, have breakfast at a cafe, and enjoy the day without rushing. At first, these differences were minor. They laughed about it and tried to compromise. But after several days, the repeated disagreements began to create tension. On one occasion, Daniel expressed frustration when Emily spent extra time shopping for souvenirs, causing them to miss a tour they had booked in advance. Emily felt that Daniel was being too controlling and not allowing space for spontaneity. The couple decided to take a day trip to Oxford, a city known for its historic university. The visit was supposed to be one of the highlights of their journey. However, the day did not go smoothly. The train was delayed, and by the time they arrived, the weather had turned rainy. Daniel became irritated by the disruptions and complained that they were wasting valuable time. Emily tried to reassure him, but she also felt pressured by his constant focus on the schedule. Later, while walking through the crowded streets, they argued openly. Witnesses would later recall seeing them speaking in raised voices near a cafe. Daniel accused Emily of being careless with time, while Emily responded by saying that Daniel was ruining the trip with his attitude. The argument ended without resolution, and the atmosphere between them remained tense. Another source of conflict involved money. Although Daniel had planned the trip carefully, unexpected expenses began to add up. Transportation, meals, and entrance fees were higher than they had estimated. Daniel, who was responsible for most of the bookings, grew concerned about their budget. He mentioned it several times, which made Emily feel uncomfortable. She offered to cover some of the costs, but Daniel insisted on paying, while at the same time expressing frustration about the situation. This financial stress added another layer of strain to their relationship during the trip. Small disagreements that might have been overlooked back home seemed larger when combined with the pressures of travel. The real turning point came during their visit to the city of Bath. They had planned to spend 2 nights there, exploring the Roman baths, the local architecture, and the countryside nearby. On the first evening after dinner, they sat at a small pub. What began as a light-hearted conversation turned into another heated argument. According to people nearby, Daniel appeared upset after noticing Emily exchanging brief conversations with another tourist at the bar. Although it seemed harmless, Daniel confronted her as soon as they left the pub. He accused her of being disrespectful, while Emily defended herself, saying she had only been polite. The discussion grew louder and passers-by noticed the tension. That night, their disagreement escalated further in their hotel room. Hotel staff later reported hearing raised voices from their room, though no complaint was officially filed at that time. Emily was said to be crying while Daniel sounded angry. The conflict was no longer about schedules or money, it had shifted into issues of trust and respect. By this stage of the trip, communication between Daniel and Emily had begun to break down. Instead of discussing problems calmly, they reacted with irritation and defensiveness. Daniel, who was usually quiet and logical, became increasingly impatient. Emily, who was often cheerful and optimistic, grew tired and emotionally drained. The following day they continued with their sightseeing, but the mood was heavy. Pictures they posted online still showed them smiling, but the reality behind those photos was different. Privately, both felt uncertain about the future of their relationship. After returning to London from Bath, another incident added to the growing problems. While taking the underground, they got separated in the crowded station. Emily's phone battery was low, and it took them nearly an hour to find each other. Daniel was visibly upset, accusing Emily of not being careful. Emily felt attacked and responded angrily. Their voices drew the attention of other passengers. This incident marked a deeper level of frustration. Emily later told a friend over a message that she was starting to feel unsafe and overwhelmed. She considered cutting the trip short, but flights were expensive, and she hoped that things might improve. Although friends and family back in California were unaware of these problems, the signs were becoming visible to those who interacted with the couple in England. Staff at restaurants, hotels, and tourist sites later recalled noticing the strained atmosphere between them. What had started as small differences in travel style and budgeting had grown into personal accusations and emotional conflict. The trip, which was intended to bring them closer, had instead revealed significant incompatibilities. Both Daniel and Emily seemed trapped between the desire to make the most of their vacation and the reality that their relationship was under pressure. This mounting tension set the stage for what would come next. The arguments, the financial stress, and the lack of effective communication created an unstable situation. As their final days in England approached, the fragile balance between them was about to break. The trigger had already been set, a series of disagreements that seemed minor at first but grew more serious with each passing day. What began as frustration over time management and expenses had turned into deeper issues of trust, control, and emotional strain. The relationship was no longer moving forward, it was reaching a dangerous point. By the second week of their trip, Daniel and Emily's relationship had entered a difficult stage. What began as small disagreements had grown into frequent arguments, and their ability to resolve conflicts was weakening. London, with its busy streets and constant activity, provided little space for calm conversations. Instead, the environment seemed to increase their stress. Each day brought a new disagreement. Daniel insisted on following their planned itinerary, while Emily wanted flexibility. When Daniel rushed her to leave the hotel early in the morning, Emily felt controlled. When Emily suggested skipping a museum to rest, Daniel accused her of not appreciating the effort he had put into planning. The conflicts were not only about travel. They began to argue about personal matters such as future expectations, financial responsibilities, and even their values. These arguments often ended without a clear resolution, leaving both frustrated. The tone of their conversations changed. Where once there had been curiosity and laughter, now there were sharp words and silence. One evening, while dining at a restaurant near Covent Garden, the tension reached a visible level. Emily was taking photos of her meal to send to a friend back home. Daniel, already annoyed from an earlier disagreement, told her that she was being childish. Emily responded defensively, saying that she wanted to share her experience with her friends. The exchange grew louder and other diners noticed. A waiter approached to calm the situation. Though the argument did not escalate further in public, it revealed how fragile their interactions had become. Emily was embarrassed while Daniel appeared cold and distant. Their communication continued to deteriorate. Instead of listening to each other, they interrupted, raised their voices, or withdrew into silence. Daniel would sometimes walk ahead in crowded streets, leaving Emily to follow. Emily, feeling ignored, would then make sarcastic remarks. Each action deepened their resentment. Emily began sending occasional text messages to her friends in California, hinting that the trip was not going as planned. She described Daniel as too serious and easily upset. Daniel, on the other hand, shared little with his friends. He kept his frustrations to himself, but his growing irritability showed in his behavior. One of the most serious confrontations occurred in their hotel room in central London. After returning from a long day of sightseeing, they argued about money again. Daniel complained that Emily had purchased items beyond their budget. Emily insisted that she had offered to pay for part of the trip and accused Daniel of being controlling. The argument lasted for hours. Hotel staff later recalled hearing raised voices from their room. Though no one reported physical violence at that time, the intensity of the conflict was clear. Emily was seen the next morning looking tired and upset, while Daniel appeared withdrawn. Trust became another central problem. Daniel expressed jealousy when Emily interacted casually with strangers, such as asking for directions or speaking briefly with waiters. He interpreted these actions as signs of disrespect, while Emily considered them normal and harmless. Emily, in turn, began to feel that Daniel was suspicious and possessive. One night, after leaving a crowded bar, Daniel confronted Emily about her behavior. He questioned her loyalty, while Emily insisted that his accusations were unfair. Their voices grew loud enough to attract the attention of people passing by. Some stopped briefly, concerned by the intensity of the argument. The constant tension took a toll on both of them. Emily started showing signs of emotional exhaustion. She cried more frequently, sometimes quietly in their hotel room. Daniel, though less expressive, displayed signs of stress, such as irritability and restlessness. The atmosphere between them shifted from hope and excitement to heaviness and conflict. Even during moments when they tried to enjoy tourist activities, the underlying tension remained. They posed for photographs, but their smiles no longer reflected genuine happiness. People around them noticed. At a local cafe, a server later recalled how Daniel spoke in a sharp tone while Emily looked down, avoiding eye contact. At a museum, another visitor observed Emily walking several steps behind Daniel, her face tense. These small but visible signs suggested that their relationship was under significant strain. At this point, Emily began seriously considering ending the trip early. She checked flight options online but found them expensive. She also worried about leaving Daniel behind and how that might affect their relationship. Instead of taking immediate action, she hoped things might improve in their final days in England. She confided in a close friend through a late-night message, writing that she felt uncomfortable and pressured. The friend advised her to stay safe and consider returning home early if she felt it was necessary. Emily did not make a final decision, but her uncertainty showed how deeply the tension had affected her. Daniel, meanwhile, felt his patience slipping. He believed that Emily was not appreciating his efforts to plan the trip. He also felt embarrassed by their public arguments and began to resent her more openly. His frustration sometimes appeared in sudden remarks or long silences. Although Daniel did not express his feelings to friends or family, his behavior made it clear that he was struggling to manage the situation. The combination of financial stress, jealousy, and disappointment created a sense of pressure that weighed heavily on him. As the trip neared its end, the couple tried to continue their sightseeing. They visited landmarks such as the Tower of London and Westminster Abbey, but the mood was far from joyful. Photos showed them standing together, yet their expressions hinted at strain. Behind the images shared publicly, their relationship was at a breaking point. The disagreements had grown into deeper conflicts about trust, respect, and personal values. Each new incident seemed to add to the weight of the previous ones, leaving little room for reconciliation. The rising tension had reached a critical level. Both Daniel and Emily were tired, frustrated, and emotionally unstable. What had begun as a romantic vacation was now overshadowed by conflict. The stage was set for a serious turning point. one that would not only change their relationship but also their lives permanently. The final days of Daniel and Emily's trip were supposed to be the most memorable. They had saved several major attractions in London for last, planning to enjoy the city before returning to California. Instead, their relationship reached a breaking point. On their second-to-last evening in London, the couple had dinner at a small restaurant near their hotel. Witnesses later said the two looked tense from the moment they arrived. They spoke little, and when they did, their words were sharp. Emily seemed frustrated, while Daniel appeared cold and distant. After finishing their meal, they returned to the hotel. According to staff, they walked quickly through the lobby, avoiding eye contact with each other. That night, a serious confrontation took place in their room. The conflict began over something small. Emily wanted to repack her suitcase for the return flight, while Daniel complained that she was spending too much time on her phone instead of focusing on practical matters. Emily responded that Daniel had been criticizing her constantly during the trip. Daniel accused her of being careless and disrespectful. The argument grew louder and more personal. Both raised their voices. Daniel accused Emily of not valuing the relationship, while Emily said she felt controlled and belittled. Hotel guests in nearby rooms later confirmed hearing shouting and repeated banging noises. At some point, the confrontation escalated beyond words. Police reports later confirmed that the hotel staff received multiple complaints from guests about the noise. When staff knocked on the door, no one answered. The situation continued for several minutes before it turned violent. Details of what happened next were pieced together from forensic evidence and later testimony. Investigators determined that Daniel, in a state of anger, physically attacked Emily. The altercation resulted in serious injuries. By the time hotel staff entered the room after calling emergency services, Emily was found unresponsive. Paramedics attempted to provide aid, but she was pronounced dead shortly after. Daniel was still in the room when authorities arrived. He appeared distressed but made no attempt to leave the hotel. Police arrested him at the scene without resistance. Reports described him as shaken, silent, and avoiding eye contact. The news of the incident spread quickly through the hotel. Guests expressed shock, as many had seen the couple together in the lobby earlier that evening. Some recalled how they seemed like an ordinary couple on vacation, while others admitted they had noticed signs of tension during their stay. London's Metropolitan Police immediately launched an investigation. The room was sealed, and forensic teams worked overnight to gather evidence. Investigators documented signs of a violent struggle, including overturned furniture and broken items. Emily's injuries confirmed the severity of the assault. Daniel was taken into custody for questioning. At first, he gave limited responses. He admitted they had been arguing but claimed he lost control after days of tension. Detectives noted his demeanor was calm but detached. Back in California, Emily's family received the devastating news from authorities and the U.S. Embassy. Her parents were shocked, describing their daughter as someone who loved helping others and who had been excited about the trip. They could not understand how a vacation meant to celebrate a new relationship had ended in tragedy. Daniel's family was equally stunned. They knew him as quiet and responsible, not someone prone to violence. His parents described him as calm, hardworking, and private. The news of his arrest left them in disbelief. The case quickly attracted attention in both the UK and the US. Media outlets reported on the tragic story of two Americans whose trip had ended in death. Headlines emphasized how the couple had met online and traveled abroad for what was supposed to be a romantic vacation. Social media users reacted with sorrow and anger. Some expressed sympathy for Emily's family, while others debated the pressures of relationships that develop quickly through dating apps. The story raised questions about trust, compatibility, and the risks of traveling together early in a relationship. In the days following the incident, Daniel remained in police custody. Prosecutors prepared formal charges of manslaughter and later upgraded them to murder based on the evidence of intent and severity of the assault. During his first court appearance, Daniel appeared pale and spoke only briefly to confirm his identity. He did not enter a plea at that stage. The judge ordered him to remain in custody while the investigation continued. For Emily, the journey had ended in tragedy. Her body was prepared for repatriation to California, where her family awaited her return for burial. For Daniel, the trip turned into the beginning of a long legal process that would unfold in a foreign country far from home. The climax of their story was not a single explosive event but the inevitable result of rising tension, unresolved conflict, and emotional strain. What started as a joyful adventure turned into a violent confrontation that ended one life and forever changed another. After his arrest in London, Daniel was placed in a detention facility while authorities completed their investigation. The case quickly moved through the British legal system due to the seriousness of the crime and the international attention it had received. Within 2 weeks of the incident, prosecutors confirmed that Daniel would face charges of murder. The evidence gathered from the hotel room, combined with witness testimonies from staff and guests, was considered sufficient to move forward with the trial. The Crown Prosecution Service (CPS) emphasized that the case involved clear physical violence that resulted in Emily's death. Daniel's defense team initially attempted to argue for a reduced charge of manslaughter, claiming that the event was the result of emotional stress and a sudden loss of control rather than premeditation. However, prosecutors rejected this argument, citing the level of force involved and the history of escalating conflict during the trip. The trial took place at the Old Bailey, London Central Criminal Court, in the spring of 2023. It attracted significant public interest, with journalists from both the UK and the US covering the proceedings. The courtroom was filled with legal professionals, media representatives, and members of both families. During the opening statements, the prosecution described the couple's journey from California to England, their growing conflicts during the trip, and the final violent confrontation in the hotel. The prosecutor argued that Daniel allowed his frustrations and jealousy to build into aggression, leading to an act of fatal violence. Daniel's defense lawyer acknowledged the tragedy but asked the jury to consider the emotional context. He emphasized Daniel's lack of prior criminal history and described him as a man who snapped under extreme pressure. When it was his turn to testify, Daniel spoke quietly, often pausing between words. He admitted that he and Emily had argued repeatedly during the trip. He described feeling frustrated about money, jealous about her interactions with others, and overwhelmed by constant disagreements. He claimed that on the night of the incident he lost control after yet another heated argument. He insisted that he had not intended to kill Emily, but acknowledged that his actions caused her death. His defense argued for leniency, citing his cooperation with police and his visible remorse. Emily's parents and siblings attended the trial. They listened silently to the testimony, visibly emotional during the presentation of forensic evidence. When Emily's mother gave a statement to the court, she described her daughter as a dedicated nurse who cared deeply for others and had a bright future ahead of her. She expressed grief that Emily's life had been taken so suddenly and anger that the person responsible was someone she trusted. After weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury retired to deliberate. They considered whether Daniel's actions were the result of temporary loss of control, as the defense claimed, or whether they constituted murder, as argued by the prosecution. After 2 days, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of murder. The judge addressed Daniel directly during sentencing. He acknowledged Daniel's lack of previous criminal record but emphasized that the crime involved a conscious decision to use violence in a heated moment. The judge stated that the evidence showed a clear escalation and that Daniel had multiple opportunities to walk away before the violence occurred. Daniel was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 18 years before being eligible for parole. The sentence reflected both the seriousness of the crime and the need for justice for Emily and her family. Emily's family expressed relief that justice had been served, though they stated that no legal decision could bring their daughter back. Her father told reporters that the verdict was important but could not erase the pain of losing a loved one. Daniel's family, who had traveled from California to attend the trial, appeared devastated. They said they could not reconcile the image of the quiet, hard-working man they knew with the actions described in court. They expressed sympathy for Emily's family while also grieving for the loss of Daniel's future. The case continued to receive attention in both countries. American news outlets reported on the dangers of relationships that move quickly and the potential risks of international travel for couples who do not yet fully know each other. In the UK, the story highlighted the issue of domestic violence, reminding the public that such cases can occur even in situations that appear ordinary or happy from the outside. With the verdict delivered, the case officially closed in court. Emily's body had already been returned to California months earlier, where her family held a funeral attended by friends, co-workers, and patients who remembered her kindness as a nurse. Daniel remained in a UK prison far from his home, beginning a long sentence. For both families, the trial marked the end of a painful legal process but the beginning of a lasting grief. The courtroom conclusion did not resolve the deeper loss. What had started as a modern love story through technology had ended in one of the most tragic ways possible, with one life lost and another destroyed. The conclusion of the trial did not end the story. For the families, friends, and communities connected to Daniel and Emily, the impact continued long after the courtroom closed. The tragedy became a point of reflection on relationships, trust, and the hidden risks that can develop when conflict escalates. For Emily's family, the loss was permanent. She had been a daughter, a sister, and a nurse who cared deeply for her patients. Her absence left a painful gap. Her parents struggled with the fact that her life ended far from home, in a country she had visited for the first time. They remembered her excitement before leaving for England and how she had spoken of the trip as a new beginning. Her colleagues at the hospital where she worked held a memorial service in her honor. Co-workers shared stories of how Emily comforted patients, worked long hours with dedication, and always found time to encourage others. For them, her death was not only the loss of a friend but also the loss of someone who made a difference in people's lives. Daniel's family faced a different kind of grief. They mourned the actions of someone they thought they knew well. To them, Daniel had been quiet, hardworking, and respectful. They struggled to understand how he could have committed such violence. His parents described living with a sense of disbelief and shame. While they continued to love him as their son, they also expressed sympathy for Emily's family and accepted the court's decision. For Daniel's siblings and relatives, the situation was equally painful. They lost not only their relationship with him as a free man but also the image of the responsible person they had admired. The prison sentence meant years of separation, visits across continents, and the awareness that his life had changed irreversibly. The case sparked conversations in both the United States and the United Kingdom. Media reports highlighted the dangers of unchecked conflict in relationships, especially when couples travel abroad. Commentators noted how travel can magnify differences in personality, values, and expectations. Social media discussions reflected a mixture of sorrow and lessons. Some users warned others to take more time to truly know a partner before making big commitments such as traveling together. Others pointed out that technology, while useful in creating connections, cannot replace careful judgment about trust and compatibility. Advocacy groups for domestic violence also used the case as an example in their awareness campaigns. They emphasized that warning signs, such as controlling behavior, jealousy, and repeated verbal conflict, should not be ignored, even if they appear minor at first. The story of Daniel and Emily highlighted the rapid pace at which modern relationships can develop. Meeting through a dating app, forming a connection, and then planning international travel within months showed how quickly people may commit without fully understanding each other's personalities under stress. The tragedy became a reminder that love and attraction, while powerful, must be supported by communication, patience, and emotional control. Without these foundations, small disagreements can grow into destructive conflicts. In California, both families received support from their communities. Friends organized vigils for Emily, while others reached out to Daniel's family with compassion, acknowledging their pain even as they condemned the crime. In London, the hotel where the incident took place reviewed its procedures for responding to noise complaints, recognizing how serious conflicts can become. Legal experts also discussed the case as an example of how international justice works when crimes involve foreign citizens. The cooperation between British authorities and American diplomats ensured that both families received information and support throughout the trial. The story closed with a sense of irreversible loss. Emily's life ended just as she was building her future, while Daniel's life took a permanent turn toward imprisonment and regret. Both families carried the weight of the tragedy, though in different ways. The case serves as a reminder of how relationships, even those that begin with joy and hope, can face risks if conflicts are ignored or left unresolved. It shows how quickly tension can escalate when emotions, stress, and lack of communication combine. For those who followed the story, the reflection was clear. Relationships require patience, respect, and a willingness to manage disagreements calmly. Without these, even the most promising connection can take a dangerous path. The tragedy of Daniel and Emily's trip to England stands as a sobering lesson. It is a reminder that love formed through modern technology must still be grounded in trust, balance, and understanding. Their story, though painful, encourages others to reflect carefully on their own relationships, to recognize warning signs early, and to seek help when conflicts begin to grow beyond control. What was meant to be a joyful journey abroad became a lesson written in sorrow. One life lost, one life destroyed, and two families changed forever.